Welcome back to the Pediatric Speech Sisters show. I'm your host, Melanie Evans, and I'm so thankful to have my guest on here today, Rachel Archambault, also known as the PTSD SLP. And the reason why I have you on here today, Rachel, is to help us introduce the conversation of politics and speech language pathology, which we'll get into a bit about that. So this is definitely a discussion-based conversation. For those of you watching live, and if you are watching the replay, still feel free to put your thoughts and opinions. This is a judgment-free zone. We're not necessarily here to debate, but just simply to share our opinions. So Rachel, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. You did a great job with the start of it. My name pronounced perfectly. Great job. My name is Rachel Archambault. I'm a speech language program specialist in Broward County Public Schools, and that is in South Florida. It is the 6th largest school district in the country, and it's the district that I went to K through 12 and now work in for the last 9 years. Before that, and the reason that I'm called PTSD SLP, or I called myself PTSD SLP, is I experienced a traumatic event at work in 2018 as an SLP at my workplace. And through that, I found trauma-informed care, and that is my area. And I'm so glad to be on today to talk about the connection between speech and politics and even trauma-informed care, because all three of those things go hand in hand, whether we acknowledge that or want to. And this is a very important topic, not just because it's election season coming up, but because politics are always in play, whether you're in the medical field or the speech field, medical or school-based speech. So politics is important.
Yes. And so one thing that comes to mind and that I mentioned to you is, this is so much because I really recently started being more tuned into politics. Of course, every presidential election, I find myself more tuned in than other parts or seasons,
Right.
That were around, of course. But in general, I did not like politics. I didn't like tuning into politics. I felt like it was very polarizing. I felt like, it was kind of problematic. And we're always raised to not want to talk about politics, especially since it is so polarizing in the United States. But as we are approaching election season, and Rachel, I was teaching at a university, and Dr. Yvette Heider has a book, and she really asked us to create a positionality statement. And pretty much that introduces our whole political views and how that would affect how we treat our clients. Well, some of my students gave me feedback and said, I thought that was inappropriate that we had to bring up politics. So I would like to actually really ask you, first of all, what inspired you to say yes? And what are your overall views of introducing politics at a university level?
So I think back to my time in undergrad or grad school, and I wonder what my opinion would have been at that time. Because while I did pay attention to politics within my own realm of understanding and how politics affects me, just me, and my family, I didn't consider it how it affects the workplace, how it affects my clients, the students, and the area around me. I didn't think of it at such a small level. So I understand why students would be confused about that. And you nailed it when you said that we are raised, right? That politics is a private thing, that you have your own opinions and they are your opinions. But what ends up happening in the speech field is it affects our clients, the people that we serve, the places we serve at such a high level that we can't ignore the politics. And for an activity for your students, I'm sure it must have come out of left field for them, that they're like, this doesn't apply at all. And I wonder if in situations like that, that assignment, if it's actually explained how each level of government, of advocacy, how each level affects them in their jobs. Instead of, well, I don't want to talk about this specific thing that I believe in or that my family believes in, because that can't apply to my field. I think that sometimes people don't understand how politics does play a part in their job and the people that they're working with. So that is a heavy assignment for many people. It's a scary assignment, but it is not at all inappropriate, especially at the higher ed level, because they need to be considering those things in the jobs that they are trying to apply to and the people that they are helping.
Yes, and one thing I want to mention, I actually did pull up the assignment here. So
Yay.
I know. So I'm going to read the positionality definition. And this comes from Hyder Salas Province 2023. So the positionality definition is an explanation of how social structures, that's political, economic, cultural, and social, including such structures as race, gender, sexuality, and ability, created your identity and influence your thinking and decision making. And so in the assignment, I had them talk about, their own identity elements. So, I even gave them an example of my own. So I am, of course, an African-American woman. I mentioned it was originally a house divided. My father was Republican, my mother Democrat. And so that affected certain things, my social class and everything. And then I talked about how my identity influences my thinking, my worldview, and my perspectives, how it influences my political alignment, and ultimately, overall, how it influences my decision making, how I'm able to decide where I decide to go to school, or the types of communities or organizations that I join, and so forth. So, yeah, and I will say that the students, really, I did also get a lot of good feedback about that assignment. They're like, it definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone, but I'm proud of who I am, and I think that overall, even when we are talking about politics, I think that we should have we should welcome open discussions more, while also being proud of our identity and where we come from.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people might read that and think, well, how does it play a part in my upbringing, how that defines me and my identity today? I think sometimes, and as informed as I thought I was at that time, and I know you can hear my dog wants to play like right now.
I know, I love this dog. I know. Thankfully, my dog decided to rest. I fed them so they wouldn't be rowdy. So
I don't know what he's doing. But I think when we think of our identities, we think of in terms of just ourselves and not in terms of our jobs. So sometimes, as informed as I thought I was at that time in undergrad, grad school, high school about my beliefs, I didn't know how they played into my job as an SLP, which I only started really understanding the depths of it. I work in a public school setting. Again, I work in the 6th largest district in the country. I started attending school board meetings, and it's really interesting when I go to all these national speech conferences and different state associations, and they say that their school board or their school district is like 100 people. Like, we have 230,000 students. So when I say that a parent, it's inappropriate for them to email the superintendent when their student gets a bad grade, they don't really understand that. And I say, when you lose a package at Amazon, do you contact Jeff Bezos? Like, that's how large the district is. It's all these inner workings. So when I go to these school board meetings, it's downtown. It's in this beautiful glass building. It's like the elite. And we are begging for raises. We're begging for the bare minimum. We're teachers in Florida. SLPs in my district are on a teacher salary. So we are we can be members of the union. And the union was the one that helped us get our salaries increased, which I advocated for. So it wasn't until myself and some other program specialists and some other SLPs, there were 10 of us, and there's 400 SLPs in the district. There were 10 of us who spoke at the board meetings. We were the ones that were researching, how do we get this done? What are the steps to doing this? Who actually controls the budget? Because when a school board member, whoever it is, saying, oh, we don't actually control that, we have to be informed enough to say, actually, you do. Your budget comes from this, which is allowed to go to us. We have to do the research. We have to be informed. So if we just think of politics, whether Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green Party, all these other parties, and putting ourselves on these lines, we really have to look at it as, how does this bill, how does this policy affect my specific location, and how does it affect my clients, my students, the area, the community around me? And also, I mean, I have a really different situation coming from a community that had a mass traumatic event. It became highly politicized. That is how I pretty much got into being comfortable with it, being comfortable talking about politics, because we were thrown into a political agenda on many different sides of saying, how does education play a part in gun control? What is the role of the educator? What's the role of a Florida educator, which was very different. So that was my introduction to being comfortable to talk about politics. And then COVID happened, when politics ramped that up as well. And now we're into election season. So it seems like it comes every 4 years, but it's really happening all the time. Politics affects us all the time.
Mm-hmm. One thing, and it's almost like you read my mind, that I thought about is I actually did want to ask you, you mentioned how politics, speech pathology, and PTSD, and that those conversations around the three intersect. Can you kind of tell us what you have in mind when it comes to that?
Can you say again? It broke up just a little bit.
Oh, yeah, sure. So how PTSD, politics, and speech pathology, how they all intersect.
So for myself, so I'm very, I'm a big advocate of mental health, right? I talk about myself being diagnosed with PTSD. I was later diagnosed with ADHD. I'm an SLP. I've got all these abbreviations going. Politics plays a part into the mental health area. It plays a part in the political area. What do we do to help this mental health crisis, right? How does it show up in our students with speech and language difficulties? How does it show up in COVID, when we all were at home with the screens in front of our faces? Like, we're seeing now SLPs saying, oh, there's a lot of COVID babies that they didn't have the interactions. They don't know what is going on, or what the ramifications are from those several years that we were on lockdown. Politics is going to play a part in the mental health area because it's become so politicized. I know that this is going to be solved by this. And then you have the other side saying, oh no, well, we need to solve mental health by this. So because we are so politicized, and there's research out there that shows how we as a country are the most divided we've ever been. It's the most not bipartisan. It's split more than ever. It's not just in the middle. So we're not able to get things done. And we're also seeing that at the highest level of government in our country, in the Senate and in the House. We're seeing split control. So when there's a bill being passed, we can't get through, or the other side can't get through because another side is blocking them, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of progress gets stalled. Or a lot of people have a reason for backing something, another person will push it back. We're just kind of floundering right now with how partisan it has become. And it's definitely a challenge in different states and just in the country in general.
Wow. I want to take a moment, and thank you for answering that question. I want to take a moment and look here. So Alicia Ramey said, the hindsight reflection of growing up in a swing state and choosing a college in a red state easily explains a few flabbergasted memories. Yes. Yes. And so, because I thought that Florida was a red state, right?
Yes. I mean, my entire upbringing, it was. I think I've only had one Democrat governor, and he was previously the Republican governor. Charlie Crist was, when I first was growing up, he was a Republican, and then he switched over to the other side, which was really interesting. So it's always been a red state. But my county, interestingly, is very blue. So that presents a lot of difficulty, especially right now in my district, when we have a Republican governor and the district is blue. So when the district makes a decision, there's pushback from the governor, and it would be the same if we're flip-flopped. So that prevents us from getting things we need in the school system, how that's affected directly to politics because it is a government job. And it's the same in the medical setting. Even if we're not talking the direct link like the school system, Medicaid reimbursement, advocacy issues inside the medical speech area, have to be advocated at the highest and the smallest government level. We have to start there and then bring it up to make change.
Mm. So how about, I'm going to throw a question at you.
Okay.
Something that comes to my mind. So I'm thinking about, I've had clients who've been affected by, lack of better terms, DACA being revoked. And so for those who don't know what DACA is, that was the policy that was in place, definitely during the Obama era and maybe
Yes.
before that. Okay, right. That said, and Rachel, please correct me if I am wrong. I did not want to misspeak on here, but if you were born in the States to immigrant parents, or if you came in as a baby to immigrant parents, then you were considered a citizen or got citizenship rights, correct?
This was the dreamers kind of thing. I think that's what they're called. So it's DACA, but the kids were called dreamers, that they were born to immigrant parents and they were allowed to stay here. And that was kind of retracted in the last few years.
Yes. And so I will say, that definitely impacted a lot of clients that I worked with when I was at a predominantly bilingual clinic. Now, as speech language pathologists who have the right to our own political opinions, who have the right to vote for whoever we want to vote for and whoever we feel aligns with our values, if the people in leadership in this country are revoking or are implementing policies that are very harmful to the people that we work with, how would you say that we can handle that or still show empathy and ensure the well-being of our clients as ASHA Code of Ethics?
I think it's really important to reflect on why we feel the way that we do, whether that is, oh, well, I feel that they should come here legally and that is a consequence, right? That is an opinion. That's how you feel that should happen. And many providers do feel that way. However, what ends up happening, we need to take away our personal mind and start just thinking about our profession, right? So if you are working in a community that has a lot of immigrants, the reality is they are probably affected. How is this traumatizing their community? Are they, what is the D word for it? Deporting. Sorry, I have like a headache today.
Yeah, I'm recovering from school based.
Right? It's only the fourth week of school, but it's been a long day. So when they start deporting people, how does that increase the possible trauma of our population, of the clients we're serving? If you're working with a 2-year-old who has can't say the R sound, and then you find out that the father was deported, how is that affecting the family? That's what we need to look into, of getting empathy, feeling empathy, understanding that it's not just a policy and how that will affect people that are not inside your scope. It will actually affect people around your community. It'll affect people outside of your community, and it might affect someone who you are working with or their family just around there. So we can't just say like, oh, well, I feel that this should be the way that they do things, or this should be the way they do things. How is it affecting the people that you are serving? Yeah. And that's what, like that college assignment that you were giving the example of. It's not just this idea of how you would, gun control is a very polarizing topic. It's not just, oh, well, if this happened, would I give up my guns? Do I have a gun? Like, it's how does this affect the community around me? Who would need a gun? Who would not feel safe? Like, how does gun control affect the people around me? You have to start thinking in those terms rather than just yourself. How does this just affect me and my family? How does this affect, as the SLP, the professional part, how does this affect the people that I'm servicing?
Thank you. I'm thinking about, and just to piggyback off of you, the negative consequences of us not taking ourselves out of the equation, which, of course, we talk about, and this is what I have to bring up, implicit biases, because a lot of times implicit biases are unconscious.
Yes.
And so to me, that's why it is especially important to do things like the positionality statement if you believe that, immigration is wrong and all of everything that comes with immigration, and if you believe very strongly about that, yet you're still servicing children of immigrant parents or people coming in, then it is necessary to dissect that about yourself. One, again, I'm not here to tell you not to believe what you believe,
Right.
but still challenge your own implicit biases, because that could really impact your decision making. That
Absolutely.
could, and unconsciously, maybe you might implement goals that aren't. And let me just speak in a broader term. Maybe
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
goals that are really not for the best interest of the family, but could be in the best interest of a mindset of, you need to learn English. You need to be very proficient in English, right?
Right. Right.
Which is culturally incompetent, and then you're being
Mhm.
unethical. So yeah, that is one huge way that I would say that politics would impact our decision making.
I think politics are just, I posted on Instagram a week or two ago, and actually I had lost the most followers that I had ever lost just by saying the field
Interesting.
of speech pathology is inherently political. That's
Mhm.
it. I didn't say a side. I didn't hint at anything like that. I didn't say, oh, I believe this. Just saying that the field was political had people leaving. I'm not here for the politics. I don't want to hear those opinions. And it's not. What's really interesting about being in this job as a speech program specialist, I have all of the high schools of Broward County. I have all of the non-traditional schools, and just I'm interested in the advocacy part for SLPs. I'm interested in having salary increases. I'm
Mhm.
interested in caseload caps. So when I go to all these different state associations, I know Ohio, I believe, has a caseload cap of 55 in the school system, or Indiana has 55. Florida does not have a caseload cap.
Mhm.
So how do we get that done? Just by wishing it? No, we have to go through the political arena to get that done. And you can say, oh, well, that's just advocacy. Advocate where? Who do I advocate to get that done? I just talk to a teacher. I talk to my boss. No, it goes at a much higher level, because at the end of the day, in the school system, they say, why should you have a lower caseload when Rachel over here is servicing 130 kids and dealing with it?
Mm.
That was me my first year. And now I'm saying this is actually unethical. This is not trauma informed. This is not best case scenario. So we have to use politics. We have to get interested in politics to understand how the policies in place are affecting us in our jobs. Whether that's Medicaid reimbursement rates. What about insurance? Many private practices might not take insurance, or maybe they only take specific insurance, or the reimbursement rates is not enough. These are all things that are important in politics and important in our field. Florida ranks the lowest in teacher pay. And unfortunately, I'm on a teacher salary schedule. So in other counties, they might have SLPs on a psychologist schedule. They might have them on a specialist level. To make these changes, you do have to be involved in politics. You have to advocate at the political level, whether that is your district, that is the state government, working with your state association, and the federal level. We have with ASHA, a lot of SLPs go every year to lobby at ASHA, and I think that's an incredible thing. One example that I can think of is hearing aids went over the counter last year, right?
Mhm.
That was a big thing, a big win for us. But how do you think that happened? That we wished it? No. We had people that had to go and lobby is seen as a bad word. That's a political word. Lobbying is bad. Lobbying means advocating. They had people go and say, why is this important? So people will get hearing aids, and we know about the cognitive decline of people who don't get hearing aids. Here's all the research that supports that. Let's make it happen. And it did. And it's showing benefits across the country.
Yeah.
These are things that we need to take into account, that this didn't just happen. It's because someone advocated at a political level. And I don't know if that's the district, the state, federal level. Someone is advocating at one of those levels or all of those levels to make sure that SLPs have what they need to service their clients, students, community.
So I want to ask, why would someone say that lobbying is bad?
I think just the word itself, I think, like you were saying at the very beginning, I was raised in an era that we were told politics is an opinion. That's something that is private. You don't talk about that with other people, along with salary transparency. And now I can't shut up about salary transparency. Anyone who asks me my salary, I break it down in specific dollars. I don't give them a roundabout. I'm like, here you go.
Yeah.
You know, and I've posted many times on my Instagram about it, so it's there in writing. It's important for us to advocate at all of these levels. And I totally forgot your original question. What were you saying?
Oh, goodness gracious. Two ADHDers.
I know.
You know what? Oh my gosh, lobbying and why?
Lobbying. Why it's a bad word.
Lobbying. Yeah.
I think that a lot of people hear lobbyist and a lobbyist in popular culture, anytime you see them on TV, is lobbying is trying to advocate for something or trying to prevent someone from achieving a goal. There's big tobacco lobbyists that don't want cigarettes to go away, something like that. So they are preventing any laws from being passed that would make, oh yeah, Alicia's saying it too. Thank you, Alicia. I think just politics is seen as like a dirty word, especially in our community right now. Lobby gets attached to that. And because people feel that, oh, in movies, I've seen that this lobbyist is trying to prevent good things from happening in politics, a lobbyist might be seen as bad. But a lobbyist is someone who is paid to get their point across. They are lobbying for ASHA. They're lobbying for hearing aids. They're lobbying for whatever it is. And any side can have a lobbyist. It's just politics, professional politicians, pretty much.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Rachel. Really, this is an introduction to a much deeper topic.
Yeah.
Because as I was letting you know, and just full transparency to the audience, I would love to do more research on what ASHA says about politics and how ASHA gets involved with politics, which of course they do because we do have the lobbying at the Capitol. But really just digging deeper into how not necessarily our political views, but again, just going back to that positionality statement and just being open with our political views and honest about our political views can really impact us as professionals.
Absolutely.
So thank you for coming on the show today. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we leave?
I guess with my experience of being able to advocate for increasing SLP salaries at my district, I would encourage you to work with other people. Make sure that you are, make sure you're not doing it alone. Whether that's just researching about how politics plays a part in your setting, whether that's medical or school, team up with your state association, present at conferences, join advocacy groups. I know in my state of Florida, there's one that's called Fair Florida Compensation, something like that. So each of the school districts are posting their salaries to try to help lift each other up in understanding what is needed at school board meetings. These are things that we can do to help our field, and politics, again, is inherently political. We have to understand the politics of why we are in the state that we are in our field.
Thank you so much. And I do want to add to that, actually, for anyone listening to this, we might be listening to this and be like, okay, this is an interesting conversation. I want to get into the political side. I want to get into the advocacy side more. I want to care more in general. And really, it's all about baby steps, because like we were saying at the very beginning, we weren't really raised to take these situations, not to not take them seriously, but we weren't raised to talk about it, especially in professional settings, if we're not in law or politics. So I understand that we don't really talk about politics in our graduate programs. It's not part of the mold of our industry, but it is very important, especially at a time as this. So just take baby steps. My baby step was, of course, it was put on me when I was reading Dr. Hyder's book, but also just simply watching listening to a non-biased news station, which was for me. And that's just how I started learning more.
Totally. And that's difficult for some people too, because you have these comfort stations, you have stuff that you grew up with in the house, or you have an opinion that you like and you go towards that. You have to listen to a bunch of sides. And I know you're saying baby steps. I was at a pool party with young professionals like 2 weeks ago, and I just heard one guy say, "Oh, I'm going to put my kid in private or charter school." And I just look at him, and next thing you know, I'm sitting at the edge of the pool with all these 30-something-year-old people sitting in the pool with their mouths open, just like they didn't know how public funds contribute to charter and private and what the requirements are. And they just didn't know. And I was able to answer some questions and try to give it as non-biased as possible as someone who works in the school system, and saying, actually, this is how it affects us. Here's where that money goes. That, not saying that's bad, because
right,
saying this is what happens with those funds. Charter schools are taking public funds and they're using it here and they're doing this and whatever. And by the end of it, the guy came up to me after like an hour and he was like, I learned so much. I had no idea, because he is not in that field. And other people, they were lawyers, they're just not in that area. And they were like, I didn't know. And it's okay for us to use our experience as professionals to say, actually, this is how it is in my setting. Here, how it is as an SLP in the school setting, medical. Tell people what you're experiencing.
Yes, and thank you for mentioning that, because one thing that came to my mind is, how do I even, almost like putting it into steps. I'm trying to put it into steps. In my
yes, head. Baby steps.
But I mean, in the sense of being informed,
yes,
before making decisions. Because if it does all go back to decision making, I've heard, it's probably obvious what my political party is, or, whatever. And so I have heard on, sadly, both sides, which I hate saying, but
yeah.
I heard on both sides just facts that were just completely wrong. Like lines get
right.
blurred because we aren't communicating. So lines are getting blurred. And so if I bring up a certain topic, sadly, it might be looked at as an agenda or whatever.
Right.
No, there's actually, research to back this up, like, fact check it. And I'm sure it's the same on the opposite side. And so just like what you were saying, I'm not trying to tell you that private schools are bad.
Right.
Just tell you that just so you can make a complete 100% informed decision on where you're sending your kids to school.
Absolutely. So I think that's what our role is as people who are in the field and seeing how policies affect us. We can express that to people so that they are informed and make those decisions. And we just had the primaries in my state. So I posted on my personal Instagram and I said, hey, everyone in Broward County, here's what the teachers union recommends. Here's here. If you want my opinion on who I plan on voting for, please DM me. I'd be happy to send you a recommendation, but please go vote. Like, go vote. And that is something that I feel is within our scope to advocate for. I don't know about the judges. I don't know about the rest of them, but if someone else that's their profession, let me know who the people are and what they stand for so that I can give recommendations. But I think that's part of our scope, that we are able to say, hey, the school board decision affects us. Please vote for whoever, but vote.
Yep. Whoever, but vote. Well, Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Where can people find you if they want to creep on that post that you made and maybe ask you some more questions about it?
Yes, you can find me at ptsd.slp, and I have a website, www.ptsdslp.com, and I have all my podcast episodes, including previous ones with you, on there. Yes. I think this is our third or fourth time speaking, something like that.
Yes, Rachel, you are really a friend of the show. Your knowledge, your experience, your passion fuels this field in ways that we are really just getting started. But I am so thankful that you are here, and the cultural responsiveness and PTSD go hand in hand. Like
absolutely,
so. Yes. Yes, I am so excited to continue this conversation with you. So I know that we've been talking about a larger panel discussion on this, but I'm glad that we were able to introduce it to our industry today.
I'd love that. I'd love that. And I'd come back anytime and speak for hours and hours on this and give specific examples. I could go on about this for a long time. So thank you for having me. I always enjoy talking to you.
Yes. Well, thank you everybody so much. Thank you for everyone watching live and watching the replay. And Rachel, I'll go ahead and put your details in the show notes, and I will see y'all in the next episode.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.